Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health. How the hell are you doing today? Hope you're doing good. I've just been getting fired up here, reading about health issues, and there's just so much I want to talk to you guys about today. Fortunately, we only got time for one topic because that's how we do things here. But I am getting real fired up because it's just amazing to me how much stuff is in the news, and I'm prepping up some pretty info and fact-laden episodes for you, and I wanted to give you one of them today, but unfortunately, I just didn't have time to do all the research. I want to talk to you guys all about this just huge merger of Monsanto and Bayer, and just how it's driving me absolutely insane how little press this thing is getting. But I really want to dive deep on that. So that's going to be a couple episodes down the road. So make sure you keep listening here to the Holistic A-Hole podcast, because that might even be a multi-show podcast, because there's just so much to dive into with that motherfucker. And quite frankly, man, as we sit here and we get just angry about everything Donald Trump does, and, you know, every triggered thing that happens, every racial fucking bigot news piece thing, you know, anti this, pro that thing, it's just amazing to me how much we overlook, you know, the stuff that actually goes in our mouth and then gets processed in our body. And, you know, somehow we're just supposed to sit back and just take the distraction that we're fed. So I am fired up today, to say the least, to say the absolute least. And, you know, I chose the topic I'm going to talk about today because I felt like it's a good basic piece of knowledge that goes a long way, and for some people could make a huge difference in your life, and specifically in your digestion, and that is the importance of chewing your food, which so few of us do anymore, which is amazing, you know? It's amazing to me that this is such an overlooked, such a simple thing, you know? I feel like we overcomplicate health, myself included, you know, because there's so many aspects and so many misunderstood parts and so many things that are just coming to light every single day, and so many controversies that it's like when you just look at the most simple, basic functions of the body that we can control just through real, easy, simple actions, it's just somehow, again, like the Bayer Monsanto deal, we don't talk about this shit. But that's why you got me here, everybody, because I'm here to talk about the things that everybody else is afraid to talk about, mainly why it's so important to chew your goddamn food. But before we get into all that, I first want to welcome everybody who's a new listener to the podcast. Thank you for finding this, however you found it. If you're here for the first time, make sure you hit the subscribe button right there in your podcast player. That way you can get alerted every single time these podcasts pop up twice a week. And then while you're, you know, in the mode of friending up all the Holistic A-Hole mediums, make sure you go over to YouTube, subscribe to the Holistic A-Hole YouTube channel. New videos coming out every week. We got the Holistic A-Hole Facebook page. Make sure you go on that and like the Holistic A-Hole Facebook page, because I've been posting a lot of new stuff over there. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Both of those are at Holistic A-Hole. So, enough of the plugs. I got a raspberry peach herbal tea here that is oh so delicious on this, for some reason, frosty day in the middle of June in New York City. But I'm not here to talk to you about the goddamn weather or my tea, although my tea is delicious. I'm here to talk to you about digestion. And look, digestion is probably the number one, I mean, aside from our actual heart beating and pumping blood, digestion might be the most important thing your body does. And let's just take a step back for a second and really think about the miracle that is digestion. Because especially here in 2018, all of us, I'm not going to be afraid to generalize or stereotype. Some of you might call me a racist for this, but all of us use mostly the front part of our conscious brains, right? Our prefrontal cortex. This is where all of our conscious thinking goes on. This is where we decide, what we're going to do. You consciously thought, oh, hey, the Holistic A-Hole podcast, I'm going to power up my phone and I'm going to scroll through my feed and I'm going to find the Holistic A-Hole podcast because I love this podcast so much and I'm going to put it in my ears. And that's how you got to me now. You think to yourself, what do I want to eat for dinner? Okay. Oh, but wait, oddly enough, there are a lot of studies and a lot of science that shows that even deciding what you want to eat is not a fully conscious process, which I find very interesting, which we might talk about here or in a future episode. But for the most part, we all live in our conscious lives. We're all conscious of what we're doing. We're making decisions, okay? A lot of those decisions, I would probably even say most of those decisions, are heavily influenced by our subconscious. No? Yes? Probably? Let's go with it. Because your subconscious is essentially the code of our software, And then the conscious is the front end, the subconscious is the back end. But the subconscious does a lot of really fucking amazing things that we just take for granted, okay? The subconscious makes your heart beat. The subconscious is how you're able to walk, right? And not sit there and look down at your feet and slowly take a step after a step. Could you imagine if walking was just a purely, prefrontal, cortex, new brain thing that we did, just a full-on conscious movement, we would get nowhere. We would still be cavemen because we'd still be trying to figure out this whole walking thing, okay? The subconscious is what allows us to just keep our feet moving without thinking about it, right? It's what makes our heart beat. It's the thing that keeps our heartbeat isn't just, powered off of nothing. It's powered off of, off the brain, making sure that it knows to beat. It's what's keeping your blood pumping, and it's what's keeping your digestive system moving. The digestion system is so insane. It's so insane when you really think about it, If you look at the bottom of a sink, okay, that plumbing, that's essentially your digestion. You've got pipes and valves and, you've got fluids being sprayed all over the place, not to mention inside your digestive tract, which is made up of your small intestines, your lower intestines, your stomach, your esophagus, okay? Everybody just kind of blatantly calls this the gut, but the gut is so complicated, right? You have these pipes that basically, if you took your whole digestive tract, they say, and you spread it out, you just took it and kind of silly putty, just stretched it out as much as you could, it would be the equivalent of a tennis court, which is fucking amazing that there's that much square footage inside your body that is handling the most important operation that's happening every single moment of your life, which is taking the thing that you put in your face and sending it down to your asshole. And that's a process that could take as little as 17 hours. It should take no more than 30 hours. But for most of us, some of the shit that goes in our face never makes it out our asshole. Some of it is just still sitting there for days and weeks and months, and for some people, even years. There's people who go get colonics, and, the colonic pulls fucking stuff out that's been sitting there for years, dude. Literally years. You would be shocked if you knew what was just sitting there hanging out inside your colon that you haven't seen, since you fucking binged late at night, after you got high or something, and you just got, gummy bears, undigested gummy bears, and fucking, Wendy's chicken sandwiches, and all kinds of crazy stuff just sitting in your colon, This is the magic of the fucking digestive system. And how does it even work, You have stomach lining cells that are alive and they're moving food from the back of your throat all the way down through this whole process. It's an automatic parasympathetic movement, right? It's just basically knows what to do. And you don't have to do any of this. You don't have to think about this. You're just going about your day. You're at work. You're driving. You're talking on the phone. You're scrolling mindlessly through Facebook or Instagram. You're, watching a movie. You're playing Xbox, whatever it is. You're fighting with your lover. You're making love. This is still happening. The digestion is still happening inside you. And there's nothing you can do to stop it unless you literally kill yourself. That's the only way to make your digestion stop. Even when it's not working right, it's still working. And this is where what we're going to talk about today comes in handy. How does it stop working right? Well, digestion technically starts before something even goes into your mouth. Digestion starts in the brain, believe it or not. Okay, think about Pavlov's dogs. All right, that's the thing that's in us all, right? That salivary gland. Okay, when we start thinking about some delicious food that we're gonna eat, like you're thinking about going to the Cheesecake Factory, and you love the Cheesecake Factory's fettuccine alfredo. God help you if you love the Cheesecake Factory's fettuccine alfredo. I think I've had it once. It was delicious, but I was also a little more white trash back then. Either way, let's say you're a huge fan of fettuccine alfredo from the Cheesecake Factory, and then you go to the Cheesecake Factory, and man, you see that on the menu, and you're like, you better goddamn believe your ass, Flo, that I'd like to order the fettuccine alfredo off this delicious Cheesecake Factory menu. Flo takes the order, and now you're just in suspense, but all the while, you're just thinking about that moment when you see that motherfucker, that big bowl, that gigantic Cheesecake Factory bowl of fettuccine alfredo with, of course, chicken. You weren't fucking around. It might be your birthday. You're like, look, I'm going to put some goddamn meat onto this fettuccine alfredo. And then it starts coming over to your table. You see it. You see the smoke, lifting off it. You can smell just the genetically modified fucking cheese on there and the processed wheat gluten noodles just sitting in there and whatever else, fucking lard or butter they mix that shit with. Just the smell alone goes into your nose as soon as Flo or Eduardo, the busboy, because Flo's out back taking a cigarette break, Eduardo's got to be the guy who delivers it to your table. He's doing all the work. Eduardo's got the whole goddamn Cheesecake Factory operation on his shoulders. While his little village in Guatemala gets swallowed up by a volcano. Man, are we off track. Either way, you start smelling that fettuccine alfredo, and what happens? Your salivary glands start going crazy. They start priming up the whole digestive system for fucking glory, which, for a meal like fettuccine alfredo is going to probably pose a lot of compromising hurdles for your digestive system to work properly. But as soon as the food goes in your mouth, you got to chew it, right? This is the next step of the digestive process. When the food goes in your mouth, now you start chewing. But here's the really crazy thing. Most people don't chew their food, okay? I know it sounds crazy, all right? I know I'm starting to sound like your mom or your grandma, and man, that's not the position I want to be in, but you forced me to do it, a-holes. You brought me to this spot, and you know what? I'm just as uncomfortable as you. You start chewing your food, and look, to be honest, you're not chewing enough, especially if you're not eating consciously, right? If you're not eating consciously, then you're just in an automatic movement of trying to get to the bottom of that fettuccine alfredo as quickly as possible, which most people, at least most people who I dine with or know or been around, and myself included, that's the game, Maybe it's because you're so hungry. You just goddamn wolf that thing down. A lot of us are eating in places like work or in the car, on a break, or before we go somewhere where we've got to go. You're just wolfing that shit down, okay? Maybe you're eating while you're watching TV or you're watching Netflix or you're scrolling through your phone and you're just in an epic Facebook fight with somebody, or it's just one of your Trump supporter friends wrote something and you're like, this goddamn white nationalist piece of shit. Meanwhile, it's a black person, and you're just so angry and triggered that you start eating and you come so close as to possibly choking because you're not chewing your food, all right? And what essentially happens is, you finish this bowl of pasta, and then like 30 minutes later, you're just like, oh, your stomach just feels terrible. You start feeling some cramping. You're real gassy, and you're burping, and you start feeling real tired or sleepy, or whatever it is. And you're just like, you're just down for the count. Okay. This is the main complaint people have with food, right? They're like, man, every time I eat, I just get gassy and burpy and farty, and I get tired. And what's up with that? Well, here's what's up with it, dude. Your body is pulling out all of its resources together to try to essentially digest the food that you've eaten, because your stupid mouth gave it no help. Your mouth gave no assistance to the whole digestive process. And really, in a way, your mouth might be the most important part of the whole digestive process, because it's the beginning, or it's the second from the beginning. But it is the part where you first make contact with the food. And any help you can give your body in breaking down food into eventually what it's going to become is its, innate molecular forms, such as if it's protein, it's going to break down to amino acids. If it's fat, it's going to break down to fatty acids. If it's, sugar or carbs or starch, it's going to break down to glucose. There's a lot of work that goes into making all that happen. And if you can make it easier for your body, then it makes the process a lot easier, and your digestion gets a lot easier, okay? But for a lot of us, that's not what's happening. Also, keep in mind that digestion is a parasympathetic. It's a parasympathetic action, meaning it's using a part of your nervous system that is specifically designed for rest and digest. Okay, you got parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, or you've got sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Okay, we all know fight or flight, right? The problem is, at one time, they're binary systems, okay? Meaning at one time, you're either in one or the other. You're not at both at the same time, and you're not in one at one time or another. You're either in sympathetic or you're in parasympathetic. Again, if you're in neither one of those, take a pulse, dude. You're probably dead, okay? If you're in parasympathetic nervous system, everything's cool. That's when you're sleeping. That's when all of the behind the scenes subconscious work is going on. That's where, your brain is detoxing all of the amyloid plaques out of there. That's the shit that causes Alzheimer's. It's when digestion is happening. It's cleaning out the system, right? It's when cells are being replaced. It's when hair is growing and nails are growing, and all of these very important detoxification processes are happening in your body. That's parasympathetic. But sympathetic, fight or flight, is what a lot of us in 2018 spend way too much time in, right? That's the whole, I think we talked about this in the last episode, where the tiger's chasing your ass. The tiger's chasing your ass, and nature equipped you with this nervous system feature so that if you do see this tiger, every single molecule, every single cell in your body becomes all about escaping that tiger. So the blood starts rushing out of your gut and into your limbs. You start, being able to run faster and jump higher. You yell louder. You're just ready for an emergency. And that's what happens when you spend all your time on social media, when you watch CNN's fake garbage news, and you get angry about Trump and white nationalists, and, or Alex Jones, or, Black Lives Matter, or whatever it is. Whatever the story is of the day, you're just, Russian collusion. You start hating the Russians. You hate people who've been your friends for years. You're ready to attack. You're on social media fights, and you're you're just in this super stressed out mode, or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's like a work thing, right? Maybe it's an important meeting. Maybe it's a potential breakup. It could be obviously an unlimited amount of things. Just take your whatever personal situation is, put it in there. That's causing your sympathetic nervous system to go crazy. So when digestion is happening, it should be under parasympathetic conditions, right? It should be under rest and digest conditions. It should be a peaceful thing, You should be having nice, loving conversations. That's why eating in groups with people who, make you happy is so important, because digestion works better. You're calm, you're chill, the body is supporting the digestive process. The nerves are not, grappling for dear life to every cell in your body, trying to get you to run away from something. It's like, no, man, we got things to do, but we're gonna get it done. Your body's like, we're gonna get it done, man. Just chill, right? But if you're in sympathetic, if you're in fight or flight, your body's not doing that at all. Your body is in full-on panic, and the digestive process is not working properly, okay? So, that's like really the big first part of, or maybe one of the most important parts of digestion is the conditions which you're eating under. But then the sympathetic fucks you up too, because a lot of times what happens is, like I said before, people are eating and consuming things in all these different stressful situations, and you're forgetting to eat. You're forgetting to chew the food, If you eat like a piece of steak or something, any piece of animal meat is going to be is to begin with very difficult for your body to break down. It can absolutely do it, but it takes a lot more resources from your body. That's why you get tired if you eat like a burger, or if you eat a big piece of chicken or pork chop or steak or whatever it is. You're always going to get sleepier because your body just needs to utilize more resources to break that down. But if you don't chew the food in your mouth, and I'm talking like probably 20 to 30 bites at least to break something like that down. If you're going like, if you're eating like a burger, okay, if you're eating a Whopper from Burger King, man, I can't remember the last time I had a Whopper, but this was my burger du jour. If you're eating a Whopper, most people eating Whoppers are not taking 10 minutes to eat a Whopper. Most people eating a Whopper are housing that thing in 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Okay, which means that's not enough time to adequately chew that burger, okay? So along with the fact that you have this big, heavy, fat-laden, protein-rich piece of meat going down, your gullet, that also, not to mention, is loaded with preservatives, is loaded with GMOs and pesticides and all this bullshit, it's going down in full chunks. So once it gets into your stomach, this is where, first it's got to go down your esophagus, okay? So, when something's going down your esophagus, it doesn't just fall down there like you're falling down a well. It moves down there very slowly, right? It takes I think 15 minutes or so for it to get from the back of your mouth, from the back of your throat, down to your stomach, okay? Now this is where the magic's supposed to happen. When food goes into your stomach, it triggers the hydrochloric acid response, okay? I don't know if anybody's told you this. I think the holistic a-hole has, but your stomach has this, has these cells that line it called gastrin, okay? And the gastrin, the G cells, are the ones, they're secreting the hydrochloric acid, okay? And they're triggered when food gets inside there. So food gets inside your stomach and starts pouring in the hydrochloric acid. This is like the battery acid, right? This is shit that if you dropped like a glass of hydrochloric acid on the ground, it would burn a hole through your floor. And then if you live in an apartment like I do, it would drip onto the person below you's floor and then probably go through their floor. And it would be a big, fun, comical situation, right? This is the shit that's in your stomach. This is basically what we have in us. And this is what breaks down food. But the problem that a lot of people have is they don't make enough hydrochloric acid, and then this causes this actually, believe it or not, causes heartburn. Okay, because there's a certain amount of hydrochloric acid that's supposed to be poured into your stomach. If it doesn't get enough, essentially what's happening is the lower esophageal sphincter valve at the bottom of your esophagus doesn't know whether to close or open. It stays open, and then what little hydrochloric acid is in there starts, shooting up out, and it goes into your esophagus, and this is basically what is causing you heartburn. We are trained now to do the opposite thing, which is think that we're making too much hydrochloric acid, and so we take Tums and Alka-Seltzer and Pepto-Bismol or get stuff like Prilosec or Zantac or any of these prescription medications, and then you neutralize. And this is another problem. People are neutralizing their stomach acid with these alkaline substances. And basically what's happening is the hydrochloric acid that you have in your stomach is not strong enough. So when you do take a big chunk of meat or food or even plant, whatever it is, it's not being broken down enough. Okay, there's a process of mixing and burning, and this is where all of the food gets broken down into those individual molecules we were talking about. Fats into fatty acids, carbohydrates into glucose, and proteins into amino acids. Okay, and then what you have is like a little basically like a little ball of stuff. Okay, and it's a combination of the food particles that didn't get digested down, on top of all the different enzymes that got thrown on it once the hydrochloric acid went in there. It's called the chyme. Okay, and then the chyme essentially is what gets released from the stomach once it hits the right pH, which is supposed to be between like 1.5 and 3. That's very, very, very acidic. And then what you get is the bottom part of your stomach, the valve there, opening up and then releasing it into the duodenum. And then in the duodenum, this is where you start getting the pancreas and the gallbladder releasing bile that's made in the liver, sprayed onto it. And this is essentially what makes your poop smell gross and gives it the brown color, because basically bile is just recycled toxic material that gets filtered out of your liver. And then from there, it goes into the small intestine and then gets moved and then, goes all the way down, and all the nutrients and minerals are extracted out of it. And, like the iron and the vitamin A and the vitamin K and, the B vitamins and the minerals and all this stuff. That's where it gets out. It seeps through the little gut lining cells and goes out into the blood, gets carried to the cells. And, this is where nutrition comes from. Okay. And then eventually goes into the large intestines, up into the ascending colon, to the transverse colon, and down to the descending colon, and then out your butthole, okay? However, again, if the food that goes into the stomach initially is not broken down enough, everything I just described to you, that pretty poopy picture, doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, or it gets seriously negatively altered. So if the food that goes into your stomach is too large, if it's not broken down enough, from that fettuccine alfredo, if you got whole fucking noodles going down into your stomach, it's going to sit there forever, just sitting there spraying hydrochloric acid, because that's what happens. If it's not broken down to the right, essentially the right fit, and if it can't get down to the correct pH, it's just going to sit in your stomach. And it's going to get processed, and then it can't go down. It's going to get reprocessed, can't go down. Then you got more coming. And this is the shit that starts, building up that excess hydrochloric acid, which seeps out your lower esophageal sphincter. And then that's what causes the heartburn. Okay. So a lot of times your heartburn, and then it's also what causes your gas, your bloating, all these problems, because you didn't chew the food. If you chew the food, if you give it even like 5 to 10 more bites than you're probably giving it, you're going to immediately, you're going to cut down on all of the bullshit that comes with digestion that you're complaining about. All the heartburn, all the gas, all the bloating. Look, This isn't a solution to help fix Crohn's disease or IBS or diverticulitis, although this is, by not chewing your food, this is what is a huge factor in causing those serious gut issues. And we'll do some holistic a whole podcasts about, about helping, helping those issues if you have them. Maybe I'll do like an episode per digestive problem. You know what I mean? Because I know there's people listening to this who are probably dealing with it. Everybody, for the most part, is dealing with some digestive issue. It's the biggest fucking medical plague on our system right now. It's the thing that is the most fixable part of our health system, yet the biggest drain financially on it. How many of you, if you're listening to this right now, have been to the doctor because of some serious digestive malady, be it IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, stomach cramping, whatever it is, gas, whatever, okay? Not to mention, if your food isn't being broken down properly in your stomach, then you're not getting the nutrients out of the food. This is a huge problem as far as like people being deficient in nutrients. Everybody knows somebody, maybe you are deficient in something like iron, deficient in magnesium, deficient in B or D vitamins or beta carotene or, whatever it is. But you're like, man, I just keep taking all these multivitamins and I keep taking, I'm eating like green leafy vegetables and I've heard grass-fed beef is really good for this sort of thing, but yet I'm still deficient. It's because your stomach isn't breaking down the food. The nutrients are there in the food, but if your stomach isn't breaking it down to its little molecule-y parts, then you're just pooping it out. That's all that's happening. The nutrients stay in the chyme, the little the little ball of matter that gets left over once all the nutrients are extracted. If the nutrients aren't extracted, the nutrients are in that chyme, in that little ball of stuff, and it's just working its way down and then eventually out of your system, and you poop it out. If you poop at all, if it's not going in and just sitting in your in your large intestine somewhere, just taking up space and causing all kinds of problems. Oh, and here's the last place I'll go with this. If it is going into your large intestines and causing all kinds of problems, essentially what the problems is that it's causing is it's basically not feeding the good gut bacteria, right? Your whole stomach lining, your whole gut lining is filled with bacteria. These little, fucking, bugs that feed on stuff. And you got good bacteria and bad bacteria. Well, you need the good bacteria nice and healthy so it keep the bad bacteria at bay. If the good bacteria doesn't get the nutrition it needs, i.e. from fiber, from resistant starch, from the minerals that are supposed to be coming out of the food. If it's not getting that, then the bad bacteria wins. And the bad bacteria is what is essentially causing all of these stomach problems you're having, right? All of that stuff, the ulcerative colitis, the Crohn's, the SIBO, all these things. H. pylori is a big one. These are the bacterial infections that are forming in your gut. Not to mention, this is where, believe it or not, this is where the flu comes from. This is where all of these sicknesses are coming from because your immune system is tied to your gut function. If your gut function isn't popping, then you're dropping, my friend. Your immune system's dropping. It's dropping the ball because it's not being controlled by the good functioning of the good gut bacteria. And then, of course, if you go back up to the top of the stomach at the duodenum, if the duodenum isn't, getting the chyme right and getting the food out properly, then you're growing H. pylori. And this guy's a motherfucker. This is the dude who will start, this is the I don't know why I call it a dude. H. pylori is not a dude. H. pylori is bacterial overgrowth. This is the stuff that starts controlling all of your bad eating habits, and it's essentially what is making your entire gut function just completely thrown off. So yeah, man, take your grandma's advice, take your mom's advice, take the one girl or that loved you, her advice, and chew your food. Chew it, bro. Count in your head when the food goes in your mouth. It might be annoying, but then it'll become, just part of your routine. Just count to 20 bites. Count to 20 or 30 bites. And then see if that actually starts to help your digestion. Don't start running off and buying all kinds of probiotics and drinking kombucha. I mean, it's such a complicated monster down in your gut that some of you are taking probiotics and they're not good probiotics. Some of you are drinking kombucha and you're drinking way more sugar than is even helping the beneficial effects of the kombucha in the first place. Make it simple, make it low cost, and just chew your food. Start there. And then watch as your digestion slowly starts to improve. And then, dude, once your digestion is popping, this is where you start seeing a lot of great health benefits. This is where you start seeing your serotonin. Serotonin's made in the gut, right? So you start feeling happier. You start feeling lighter. Maybe you start losing some weight. Maybe at the very least, you're not as gassy and farty and burpy and smelly. Maybe your hair starts to improve. Your nails start to not be so gross. Skin problems, right? Skin problems are associated with bad digestion. Maybe your eczema starts to go away. Maybe you've got a problem with chapped heels and nasty, crusty, gross toes and toenails. Maybe that shit starts to improve. There's a million things that start to happen, literally a million things that start to happen when your digestion improves. So let me know how it goes for you. If you start chewing your food, if you start taking any of this advice I'm throwing out there, shoot me a tweet or a Facebook message. Let me know if this shit's working for you. Also, go on to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, and let me know your thoughts on the podcast. I love getting a nice little message from all the great a-holes out there. And let me know what you think about this. I'm dying to know if this advice actually works for you. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. Find me on all the social mediums. And keep listening. And if you're new here, make sure you go back, binge on the previous episodes, and share this with anybody who you think would benefit from this information. I appreciate you guys listening. Have a great afternoon. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.